So next up we have Errol Smart, who's the Managing Director of Orion Minerals. Mr. Smart has 28 years of industry experience across all aspects of exploration, mine development and operations, with experience in precious metals, precious and base metals. Errol has held positions in Anglo Gold, Clough Mining, Metallan Gold, Clarity Minerals, Aligned Gold Corporation and African Stellar Holdings. He currently serves as Director of the Board of the Minerals Council of South Africa, and he will be presenting remotely. So over to you, Errol.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sad to be missing this event in Perth today. My chairman, Dennis Waddell, is present in the room and will answer all the difficult questions afterwards. Please don't spare him, give him a hard time. Ladies and gentlemen, and the dignitaries in the room, I am usually present at ADU. It's a fantastic event, and I'm desperately sad to be missing it. But I'm also very pleased that I can present to you an update on Orion and what we are doing in South Africa. You know, what we set out to do in 2016 in South Africa already, we saw this huge shortage that the world is now speaking about, and it's on everybody's lips, about the massive copper shortage that is looming in the world. And the fact is, over the next 26 years, the human race has to mine more copper than what it has actually mined in its entire existence. That's sobering. You know, the experts tell us that this is about the survival of the race. Unless we electrify everything, and unless we have the copper to electrify everything, we have got an existential problem on our hands. And right now, the mining industry doesn't know where this copper is going to come from. That's an amazing situation. And it's a situation that is going to drive prices. And I'm very certain that the geologists and the engineers are going to find these mines and build them in time. But it's going to take incentivization pricing to make that happen. And that's what we've been positioning ourselves for, is that incentivization pricing. And it is very shortly going to be on us with a rapidly rising copper price. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to position Orion specifically to be able to actually fulfill the entire value chain, the whole circular economy around copper, from the point of discovery to the point of sale of the final product to the end user. We would like to see a situation where we can use renewable energy, responsible sourcing, strong enterprise and stakeholder support for everything we do, and environmentally friendly operation. And the Northern Cape of South Africa is a unique geographic situation that just absolutely allows itself to do that. It has been driven because of problems in the national energy supplier to become a renewable energy production hub, and is actually now being developed as a hydrogen production hub. So there are actually declared special advantage zones where there's actually government incentives in place for anything that's involving renewable energy and the use of renewable energy and the generation of renewable energy and hydrogen. And these are on the doorstep of some of the biggest copper districts that South Africa had. Two big copper districts on the eastern side there, the Oceap belt, which is predominantly a VMS belt, and on the western side, the Oceap copper district, which is a bunch of intrusives. And quite strangely, in the middle of the Oceap belt in the east is another intrusive district, and that's an intrusive district that is nickel predominant. So there we have nickel, copper, cobalt, and PGE mineralization. This is a real smorgasbord of mineralization, and it's brownfields for development. These were major producing districts, and the major infrastructure is in place to get them back and going again. And when I say major producing districts, you know, from the 1940s to the early part of this century, we actually saw big production, predominantly from the Oceap district, where we've now consolidated more than 75% of the rights, and then also the Prisco copper zinc mine that operated from the early 70s until the early 90s. Both of these mining districts have not fully exploited the ore bodies. In fact, there's probably more ore remaining than what has historically been mined. And it is really just a passage of history and macroeconomics that made these mines close when they did. And they closed at a time when there were very low real terms copper pricing, way lower than what we have today. And that is what Orion sought to consolidate, because we are really at that right time to build mines now. We see the opportunity that the copper price could be up in the teens per ton. And that is a situation that we want to be delivering into. We don't want to be starting the path of discovery then. We want to be delivering into that, and we want to be delivering into it in a sustained, managed, controlled system that we can actually certify from the point of application for a prospecting right through our whole prospecting program, the way that we interact with our communities, the way that we behave environmentally and sustainably, through to producing the metals. And actually, the next step for us is actually going to produce the future-facing metal products. It's not for us about producing copper ingots or wires or rods or pipes. We're looking at the nano production, the high value end of the value scale, and there's going to be a lot more news from us over this in the next while. We're busy with a test work program at the moment in South Africa, and it is progressing extremely well, and we will be updating you on that shortly. So just recently, in the last couple of weeks, we've closed off a 7.35 million Australian dollar financing. We raised $6 million in private placements. We raised another $1.35 million via a share purchase plan. Our current register at the moment, we basically owned by 3 separate groups, about 30% South Africans, about 29% Australians, and interestingly, 40% Europeans. This is because we believe the Europeans are very driven towards this whole green, sustainable sourcing of metals, and they see the opportunity in South Africa. We are dual listed. Our primary listing is on the ASX. We're an Australian company, and 68% of our shares are actually held on the Australian register. But interestingly, the inverse is true. 70% of our shares are actually traded in Johannesburg on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So it's quite interesting. The price setting is actually happening in South Africa, and the ownership is predominantly European, and our listing and our majority of shares are actually held on the ASX. So it's an interesting situation, but Orion is in a strong position at the moment to start unlocking this value. So let's just quickly page through the projects, and a reminder, and you've seen a lot about these projects over the last 2-3 years. In 2017, we acquired the Priska Copper Zinc project. In 2020, we had completed the bankable feasibility study, and we were fully permitted. By August 2020, it's 2 years ago now, we were actually fully permitted to build this mine. And we've been working very hard on the financing. It is a challenge for junior miners for a reasonably big ticket like this is. This is a project that is got a long lead time, the way bankable feasibility was done. To raise 430 million Australian dollars with a 3-year lead time in a South African project has been challenging. I won't hide that fact. But we have made enormous progress with that. And particularly over the last couple of months, we've refocused the business, and we're actually busy looking at a feasibility study now to bring in earliest possible production. It will be more moderate scale to start with, but over a 4 to 5 year period, we can reach that same target production, but by reducing the peak funding requirement dramatically. And that's very important for us. Early production and reducing peak funding requirement. And since we've done the bankable feasibility study, a lot of technologies advanced, opportunities have opened. and things like supply of renewable energy by independent power producers, because the government has now lifted the regulation cap on that. So we could be completely renewable energy powered on this mine at a lower cost than the grid cost that we had in our feasibility study. We have also developed slightly refined dewatering program for this mine, less sensitive, together with early mining, potentially reducing the capital cost of the dewatering of the mine dramatically. Those are the big impacts that we're seeing at the moment, and we're busy working through it. Just on the mine itself, on the left-hand side, you've got a cross-section through the ore body. It was discovered in 1968. By 1973, they built the mine 5 years. It's strange that we're dealing with almost similar situation now, where, 2017, we got hold of the property. The original project here was 1968. And by 73, they were mining. And in this case, hopefully by 23, end of 23, we're starting to put ore on surface. And how will we do that? On the right-hand side, we have a long section of the mine. You can see the area below the large brown block on the top left-hand side, mined down to the bottom of the shaft at 970 level, extracted 46 million tons of ore, very successfully produced very good quality concentrates, separate copper and zinc concentrates from the mine. The mining method was an open stoping mining method. So none of the voids, that 46 million ton hole in the ground is still a 46 million ton hole in the ground, but it's supported by those green blocks. Those are the geotechnical support pillars. Our mining method to come back and extract the ore that remains at the bottom of the synclinal feature here, at the flat tipping ore, where we've got 30 million tons of ore. This is a beautiful, continuous, consistent 9 to 30 meter wide ore body that is open in every dimension. On all ends of this ore body, it is not closed off yet. And we've got some of the highest grade and thickest drill intersections that have ever been drilled on this ore body are right on the margins of our current resource. Our geophysics tell us that this ore body is going to continue. And while we've done a feasibility study on a 12-year life of mine, management certainly believe that we're going to be here for 15 to 20 years. This is a fantastic opportunity. And by bringing forward that big brown block on the top left, where there's about 1 million tons of very high-grade supergene-enriched copper sulfide ore, and by mining some of the green blocks, those are massive blocks. Some of those are 1 million tons a piece. In total, there's 9 million tons of those green blocks, which are pillars that were left in place. That's over and above the 46 million tons already mined from this ore body. That's our opportunity for early production. It's pre-developed, it's accessible, it's available, and we are rapidly advancing to getting the plan for mining this early ore, which we believe we could have in production within 15 to 18 months of actually getting the financing in place. So much earlier than the 40 months that the bankable feasibility study originally intended. So lots of exciting stuff happening here and a lot of news coming shortly. We have had a big breakthrough in the financing, where we've put together a streaming and a gross revenue financing stream for a total of 120 million Australian dollars, with exchange rates having moved now a little bit. That's a bit more. What we do have to do, it's conditional on Orion securing $20 million of co-funding. People are saying, where are we going to get the $20 million of co-funding? Well, we are very advanced in discussions with a lot of institutions, and particularly with one of the big development finance agencies in South Africa that we've built a very strong relationship with. And I think you will very shortly be seeing some news on that front. So the early mining scenario, as I said, we've got a open pitable resource of 1.1 million tons at 1.9% copper. our recent drilling has shown that there is very high grade copper, some of it over 4% available, that's actually accessible by the current underground mine development. So we are busy looking at an underground mining scenario and also extracting those pillars. And then this morning, on Monday morning, we made a very interesting announcement that we had got our first mining rights awarded in the Oceap copper project. Now, this mining right is sort of at the geographic center of all the rights we've put together. This district is an absolutely amazing district. You know, there's 1,700 known occurrences of mineralization in this district. Only 200 of them have had any drill testing. Of those 200, more than 100 of them have got grades of copper, you know, in the over more than 5 meters width, and more than 2% copper that have never been followed up. We've bought an enormous data archive, and we've been mining the data archive and getting this all in place. But right in the center of this block is that darker red block, and that is where we've just got our mining right approved. And there we had already completed a scoping study to get an initial cornerstone small-scale mining operation going there, that we believe we can have in operation within 16 months. It's about $60 million to build it, and it has got very good financials involved. And we believe that this district, as I said, more than 1,700 known mineralized bodies on surface, more than 100 of them have got economically important drill intersections that haven't been followed up. And if you see why, it's the history of ownership. This is a graph of the real terms copper pricing over the history of operation of the Oceap Copper District. And you see that every time the copper price fell to long-term real lows, ownership changed in this district. And as a result, in the last few decades, in the last 2 decades, when the ownership changed the last time and the mines were stripped, all the equipment was taken away, there has been no mining. And now we are back at very near to historic highs, and certainly predicted historic highs, outstripping any of the historic numbers. And we have now consolidated this district, which is a brownfields district, ready to go. And with one mine in the middle, where we've now drilled out a JORC resource of 11.5 million tons. You know, historically, goldfields, and we can't rely on this, these are not JORC compliant numbers, but they had more than 52 million tons of ore that hasn't been mined in their inventories. And we just systematically going back and reproving all of that, but we are also busy exploring and discovering new high-grade mineralization that wasn't previously known. So this district is really exciting. The numbers are compelling. I'm very happy to take questions. My email address is available. Dennis, our chairman, is available to answer questions today. But one last thing, and it's not by any means the least, is our Yaku Mainspun nickel copper cobalt project over back in the east in the Ariaga belt, about 70 kilometers to the north of Prieska. And this is where we've got a big intrusive nickel copper cobalt platinum complex. About 1/7 of the outcropping mineralization has been mined. It's an ultramafic intrusive body. In most places, they're dikes. And we've got 68 million tons of JORC resource here. Orion has been quite successful in drilling some nice high-grade near-surface mineralization, but we are more excited about the opportunity because nickel, even worse than copper, is there is just not sufficient nickel for this going E that the human race needs and that the world needs at the moment. And what we are looking at is getting maximum extraction of the disseminated nickel sulfide ore and turning that into the actual battery precursors or into the nano powders. And this is known technology. It's not stuff that is black box and unproven. This is stuff that's been done since 1902. It's been done for 120 years. But what has happened over the last 30 years, and particularly over the last 10, is there's been huge steps in actually making this energy efficient, to making a closed system so that we recapture and recycle the gases that were used, because we're using carbonyl gases and chlorine gases. There are massive existing plants in the world that do this. They're well known. Vale do it at Copper Cliff in Canada and at Clydach in Wales. This is where the actual nano powders, carbonyl powders of nickel are produced, together with Jinshuan and a number of other places in the world. That is where the opportunity lies. Use proven technology, but with the engineering advances that have been achieved over the last 20, 30 years to unlock an incredible value cycle of very high value products. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to tell. We've only had 20 minutes, but I'm very pleased to hand you over to the capable hands of Dennis, who's in the audience, and he'll take your questions. Thank you very much.